Hey everyone, welcome to Conversations We Need to Have. I have some lovely couples here, and they all look alike. And I'm so excited to be talking to these interracial couples just about their experiences. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and say where they're from, and we're going to get right into it. If you see babies falling out the ceiling and jumping up and down, just ignore it. And it's just going to be a night of fun conversation and just honest interaction. So we'll start with Nick and Rochelle first.
So I'm Rochelle.
I'm Nick
Townsend, and we live in Flowery Branch, Georgia.
Okay. And the Stillwagon.
I'm Ramona Stillwagon.
I'm Russell Stillwagon.
And we live in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay. And the Loans.
I am Joshua.
Hi, I'm Kelly.
And we live in Melbourne, Australia, by way of Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. How is it over there in Australia?
We've been here 5 years now, and it's 10 a.m. Friday.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So my first question, and I want to go ahead and get this question out the way because I know it's a question that's been on everybody's mind. It's been on my mind for years. My sister's married to a white male as well. So I'm familiar with the workings of interracial relationships, but I'm curious about this one question. And depending on the answer to this question, we can just leave the conversation where it is. Do you all warm up your potato salad?
What?
Do y'all warm up your potato salad?
He better not.
People eat warm potato salad?
Okay.
You warm up your potato.
No.
I'm just making sure because if anybody would have said yes, we're just gonna end the call now.
Who does that?
I know people. So I want to ask, and I want each of you to just tell me, how did you all meet? We'll start with the Stillwagons.
Oh, why don't you tell him? Because
you get to tell this one.
We met at work, but he said I was checking for him, but I really think he was checking for me. So, and that's kind of how that went. He was just authoritative, and he was like, he's very much an introvert, and I'm like all over the place. And he didn't want to talk, and I wanted to talk. That still doesn't mean I was checking for him. He was still checking for me.
She was checking for you.
Okay. Nick?
Me and my wife met it's about six years ago. We at work at the hospital near here. We both worked on the same floor.
And I was checking for him, and he was not checking for me. We worked opposite shifts. So at first, I worked the day shift, and he worked night shift.
I just wanted to go home.
And he was all tired, and he wanted to just go home. And I was like, hey, and he was just like, okay, come on, let me give you a report. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, Josh and Kelly, how did you all meet?
So we met at work as well.
Sort of.
Kelly's department supported, well, pretty much I worked in sales, she worked in operations. Yeah. And the company that we worked for actually did a national anthem for the Braves game. And so we sang there, and I stood
behind her. It was like an employee unity thing that they did.
Oh.
Let's all come together and sing the national anthem type deal. And Kelly, when we did the lineup, she was in front of me and I was behind her, and she turned around and she saw this tall glass of tea.
I was not looking for that.
That's pretty much what happened.
I told
Okay.
you
No, I believe you, Josh. I believe you. So, my follow-up question: when did you realize that you were in love with each other? Whoever wants to jump out there.
Oh. I don't like in love or like, oh my God, I really like, I have to be with this person. Because that happened for me. Nick is originally from Baltimore and I'm originally from Rhode Island, and he hated living down here and didn't want to live anymore. And so we became friends over, I would say like a year and a half, and we started hanging out all the time. And then one day he was working, I switched to night shift, and he was working, and I liked him. I just liked his personality. And I mean, I thought he was cute. And so I went down to talk to him because he was working on another floor, and he was like, I'm leaving and I have a job somewhere. I got an interview in Baltimore and I'm leaving. And I was just like, oh, okay. I said, like, I was like, dang, don't go. And then I was walking away. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. Like, what? Like, why is he going to leave? And I don't think he's my friend anymore. So that was probably about a year into our friendship. And we had like a strict friendship. I don't even think we hugged each other. Like we were just, like I was his buddy. You have to say all that.
For Kelly and I, we dated the first time around for about 2.5 months, and then we broke up, and then it was a 2.5 year silence of no communication at all. And then when we got back together, after I apologized and pretty much was like, hey, I'm sorry for how I broke up with you, blah, blah, blah. I would say within 7 months of the dating the second time around, I knew that I was going to ask her to marry me. But it was a moment where I was like, God, you need to tell me that I'm not supposed to marry this woman. Like me. But I knew that I was in love with her probably at the 6 month mark.
I knew within 2 months.
I think kind of the same for me. I realized that when I used to come home from work and sit in the window and wait for his truck to pull up. Like he had a truck that the muffler was very loud. So I knew when he was coming, and I would get so excited and run to the kitchen window and just like wait for him to pull up and then go run back in the living room and act like I wasn't waiting. And that's when I realized, but we didn't really, it was like, I don't even know, I guess it would be dating. I don't really think, we just said like, this is what we're going to do. And then shortly into that, it was like, yeah, so we're also not going to play house and we're not going to do this. And we just decided that we're going to be married. That's right.
There was a section too that she skipped, which we each had, our own lives when we met. And it was like we would go to work in the morning and we were so excited to see each other. And we would just talk, we would hang out. Next thing we know, oh, it's time for work. We got to go to work. And then we would be best friends throughout the workday. And at the end of the day, everybody was tired. We'd go our separate ways. And the next morning it was the same thing. Oh, I can't wait for Russell to show up, or I can't wait for, until Ramona. We were just anxious the whole time until we saw the other person.
Okay.
That's when I sort of knew where it was going.
So my next question is, interracial dating, believe it or not, is still sort of frowned upon, like in the South, in Georgia. I think it's been less than 5 years where the schools in Southern Georgia just integrated their proms, where they would have a prom for white kids, then have a prom for Black kids. Yeah, like Columbus, Georgia, areas like that, they just integrated their proms. So when you all started dating, did you catch any flack from, and you can discern how much you want to talk about this, but how did your families embrace your partner when you decided I'm going to date a Black person or I'm going to date a white person? How did your families embrace that?
I think his family went into shock. I think they went into shock. And for mine, it was the norm. We definitely have a couple of interracial marriages in our family. But for his, I think when I showed up at that funeral for his grandmother, didn't nobody look like me. But it was all good because we had a good time anyway. But it was, I think for his family, it might have been different. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. But for mine, I think I might have said it all my life. I kind of knew that I would not, I would marry outside of my race.
Okay. Josh, Kelly? Please don't get in trouble. Anybody.
A little bit different, where Kelly's family pretty much embraced me, like, from the jump. I think they really just cared that Kelly was with someone that loved her and treated her, with respect and things of that sort. Now, there were some situations on my side of the family, because I'm originally from Mississippi. So you have to understand that because of that background and that state being the way that it is, let's just say that I had some family members, extended family members as well, that were just like, what makes you good enough for, Josh? And then a comment was even made, why did you give up on Black women? And things of that sort. And I had to respond in a way of like, did you think that I just woke up one day and said, okay, God, yeah, I'm done with Black women. I'm just gonna go find me a white girl. No, that wasn't it. It was, this is who I chose to date, and it's who I fell in love with, and it's who, I want to marry. So I have that free will to do so. But you better believe that we had our share of side eyes and everything else. Like, I'll tell you,
even your mentor.
Yeah, I mean, with that was pretty much the reason why we broke up in the beginning, because my mentor at the time questioned why I was dating a white woman, and pretty much gave me an ultimatum and said, you either break up with her or find a new mentor. And because of the mentor and the time period and the years that were there, I broke up with Kelly and continued the mentorship. But in that 2.5 year span was when maturity came, and it was like, all right, you can't mentor me anymore. So let's see what happens from here on out. And and I haven't spoken to him since 2013 and haven't seen him either. But long story short, we had some rough patches in regard to outside influence and their opinions on our relationship.
And we're going to come back to that. We're going to unpack that a little bit later on. I want to hear the Townsend's response to that as well, to that same question, as far as how did your families embrace each other.
I was kind of in the same boat as Ramona. I guess I grew up in predominantly white areas, so that's pretty much all I ever dated. So I'm a true believer that attraction is kind of like, especially when you're younger, it's like proximal. You're not going to just go out of your way. Like, if your friends are white and you become friends with those people, you go to middle school and high school, and that's who you date, and that's just how you start to naturally be attracted to people. So I always kind of thought that. I guess people would always comment about it, so I would be like, well, maybe I should try to date somebody else. But at the end of the day, I was just, and we were friends first. So like, people say, oh, you have to think about race, but like, he was really my friend that I just became attracted to. Do you? I don't. Do you have any? I don't think so.
Other than eating spicy stuff, nip that in the bud real quick.
No. Yeah, I mean, my family. I'm also Liberian American, so that was another dynamic. I'm a first generation American. My parents are from Liberia, so I guess extended family there was no comments, but it's just like, oh, okay, like mixed white, like. But other than that, and then your mom was fantastic. I don't know. I can't speak for every person, but I know when you're Black and you're dating someone out of your race, you feel like you have to like, do your parents know that I'm Black? Like you have to say like, does this person know I'm Black? Like, because don't just be like, oh, like don't just be like willy-nilly because I don't want to feel uncomfortable. And I didn't feel like we had to do that because, yeah, she just wanted a granddaughter and she just wanted a daughter. So she was like, oh, it's a girl. I love you. Like.
So I guess my question to piggyback off that, we talked about family, but I want to unpack. I know Josh was talking about the side eye from people, and I know Black men get this a lot when a Black woman sees them with a white woman. So I want to ask Josh and Kelly, like when you're out, and and it may not happen as much in Australia, and it could, but when you're out and Black people or white people see you all, what type energy do you all feel from that? And has it become comical now, or you all just used to it, or how does that work?
You want to go first?
I mean, yeah, like I think anywhere in the South, I mean, we've had a lot of side eyes from both sides. I mean, I've been to all Black churches with Josh and I are pastors, and so we've been in a lot of different places. And yeah, it's interesting to see how people respond in the predominantly African American churches. What you find is that the females do give me looks of death a lot of times, and why are you with him, and what are you doing here? They're kind of looking at me like you don't look like the rest of this congregation. I've even been mistreated by waitresses. I mean, and you get to the point where you go, there's a reason for this, and I can't judge that reason because I don't know what that individual has been through. I don't know what experiences they've had to make them feel that way. But yeah, it has happened quite a bit, but it's also happened where we've gotten stared down by old white people in Mississippi, where they just, we got refused service in a Black nail salon.
A funny story. We went to Jackson for one of my best friend's wedding. I was one of his grooms and whatnot. And so because Kelly and I were not married, but we traveled to the wedding together, I brought she's pretty much like my sister, my younger sister or whatever. So we went to this nail salon because we couldn't check into the hotel yet. And so I was just like, all right, well, let's go. I'll treat you both to pedicure, manicure, blah, blah, blah. I'll spoil you. Thank you both for coming on the trip, blah, blah, blah. We walk in and there are 5 seats available.
Nobody was in there.
No one was in there. There were 4, Black employees that were sitting there waiting. And I said, hey, ladies, how y'all going? Hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, what's up? Hey, check this out. I got my girlfriend and my sister. They need a manicure, pedicure. And they was like, oh, yeah, fine. No worries. Well, when Kelly and Pam, was her name, came in, they saw Kelly as white. And then they said, oh, no, we all booked. Like instantly, wow. It was, we're booked.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, but you just told me to let them come in. Yeah, but we're booked now. So we walked out the door, and then this old elderly white couple got out of their car and saw us walk into our car, and they were like looking at Kelly, how dare you be with this Black man?
I was like, hi. They didn't.
I'm certain they wasn't thinking Black man, but.
Oh yeah, of course. We try to keep it PG-13.
Yeah.
And,
they stared us down, didn't respond when we said hello.
Like I'll even tell you,
death.
You mentioned America versus Australia, even here in Australia. So both of our kids, we have a 3-year-old daughter and as you see, a 3-month-old son.
There we go.
But when we were pregnant with our daughter, an individual in the church, this is how bad it is. An individual in the church came up to Kelly and asked her if the baby inside of her was my baby.
Actually, two different people did that.
And said, "Is that his?" And then pointed at me. And then someone else on a different date, totally different person, said, they pretty much asked Kelly, why was she here? Why did she move from America? Blah, blah, blah. And she said, "Oh, I'm married to Pastor Josh." And long story short, she goes, "The big black man? Oh, wow, you're brave. You're
she
brave."
She looked at me like, if he ever turns on you, you're done. I was like, he's actually,
yeah.
Do I even have this conversation? Like, how does this work? Are you afraid that he's going to beat me up in our house? What's happening? Like, it was really strange.
So I want to ask Ramona, because I know that you all are in ministry as well, right? Yeah. So how have your experience been as far as in the church? And first of all, I'm a musician, so I have been in predominantly black churches. I've been in white churches. And the only problem that I have with white people is that they clap on the downbeat. You know, and we gonna need y'all to fix it. And we gonna need y'all to help me fix that. Because I'm looking sometimes when the monitors are not working and I'm trying to get the tempo, I'm looking out there at the audience to make sure the tempo is right. And you know, that downbeat would throw us off.
Yeah. Don't even try. It's hopeless.
Oh man.
I want to ask Ramona, how have your experience been as far as you're in Charleston, so I know that you have some there are some things that go on in Charleston that white or black people may not be proud of. But how have your experience been as far as the religious aspect? I think she's
both, whether it be white or black. But the white people that we've come in contact with, like there have been restaurants where we will never go again. I think there's like 4 or 5 where we will never go because of the way we were treated. And most of them were predominantly white. When it comes to people, most of the time it's my brothers that are super disrespectful to my husband. Just saying things, completely out of pocket, that they know they should not say. He makes it very known that we're together because Russell has this thing that if we get in the presence of other black men, Russell will rub the skin off my shoulders. Like he lets you know that this is all mine and I'm right here. So he does this continuously. So they know we're together and, I wear my ring. So you see that too, but they will still, make comments or a lot of times it's inappropriate. And, it's completely disrespectful. And then there are white guys too, who will try to hit on me and no comment because it's almost like the clapping in the church. It just doesn't make like the way they do it doesn't work right. It just doesn't, it's corny. And not that all of them have that, but it's just the approach sometimes. It's almost like they're scared to say something, but they want to say something. I've had some when we've been together and they were like, "Oh, it's so cool to date a black girl because you seem exotic. Are you from Jamaica?" It's almost like they start to put you in a category because of what you look like. As far as the church, we've done predominantly white, we've done mixed, we've done predominantly black. Where Russell meshed the most at, I think, was when we went to a predominantly black church. He started playing music there. He liked it. When, I think he can speak for himself. But as far as for me, no one has ever said anything, but you can see the faces. Like no one has ever said anything to us in church, but you see their face. You know that they're looking like, or what you doing with him. And just ask me if you want to know.
And I think with the church that we attended, it was rather small. So it wasn't, if there was something there, it was well hid. Where I noticed it more is when we had visiting churches come. and you would have essentially their whole congregation coming to our church for the anniversary or something like that. That's when it seemed like we would get more looks, and nothing was overtly said, but you could tell some individuals were completely against it.
And we were petty sometimes on purpose. You know, if people were looking at us strange, we'd like do excessive PDA, you know, just because we knew, like, if it bothers you that much, let me help it bother you a little bit more. Like, sometimes we were childish and petty and we would do things, but this is the norm. It's the norm. And it's the culture, and everybody doesn't approve. And just like Rochelle said, I went to predominantly white schools. A lot of my friends were white. I grew up in Florida, you know, so military, it was a melting pot for every single race and every single nationality. So it wasn't until I moved to Charleston that I realized racism is an issue. You are treated very different. In Florida, it's almost like it kind of never really mattered. Came here, I learned a lot about Black history that I did not know growing up. So, and I learned a lot of it because it was either going to be displayed some type of way in front of us, or it was displayed to me personally, just with certain things, you know, not, you know, knowing that I'm the token for certain situations, or they would just call me to be there because, you know, oh, I have a Black friend. I hate that statement more than anything, because what is that? What are you really saying? Why are you saying you have a Black friend? Is that to justify what's in your heart? Because I really feel your matters of your heart will pour out at some time. And when you make that statement, I have a Black friend, I feel it's to cover up something that you really feel inside. So I would hear that a lot. And it just made me, you know.
I want to do a follow-up question after Nick and Rochelle, because I want to come back to what you just said. But I want to ask Nick and Rochelle to give me some of their experiences. I want to hear from Nick first, Rochelle, if that's okay. And Nick, you remember you wear the pants in your house.
I'm wearing shorts right now. No, aside from the looks, there hasn't been too much. But for the most part, it would be just small stuff. People would look at you funny, but I don't know. I'm like 6'1", almost 300 pounds. Nobody's gonna say nothing to me. But we'd go out and you would see people wait for me to walk away and go to the bar to like grab us a drink or something. Then people would walk up and try and talk to Rochelle or anything like that.
Yeah, that same disrespect that Ramona is talking about, kind of like
just stuff like that.
What's that white boy gonna do? Basically, like like our relationship. Yeah, like what's he gonna do? And I'm like, let's not do that. But as far as the church, Nick didn't grow up in church, and I did, and I grew up in like a mega church, so it was multicultural. A pretty predominant one. That's where I grew up in. And so I don't think that the looks or anything like that, I don't think the prejudice is as outward. I think when you have situations like that, it's more systematic, where it's like, well, I don't think you should probably say stuff like that, or being the token, or just, let's have you in here to, change the look. And I actually went to, Lee University. And I remember I was somewhere, which is, a Pentecostal church. I was going to a party, like a get together. And the friends that I grew up with church with, I was with them. We were going to the party, and somebody else that we had met at Lee, they called them and said, "Oh, do you want to come?" And they were like, "Oh yeah." And they're like, "Oh, we're going to Chattanooga to this, to get together." And the person asked, "Oh, what's the demographics look like?" And I was like, "Oh, that's like, you go to a Christian church, like a Christian school." Like, I was like, "Oh wow, why is that like a problem? Like the demographics?" And they're like, and like she got uncomfortable and like took the phone off her speaker. So it was like, it's like that situation. It's like no one's outwardly staring or, refusing service, but it's like innate things that people don't know, or they do know and they just refuse to address it. So that was that kind of situation. But as for in our church, no, our church is really multicultural. So that really happened.
So my next question is, and this is for whoever wants to jump out there and answer it. What do you think the root cause is, other than racism? We're in 2020, and people still have issues with interracial dating. Because I do know some pastors who preach a doctrine against interracial marriages. I know several pastors who have the sense that white people should marry white people, black people should marry black people, and God has not called them to cohabitate in marriage. So, what do you think the root cause is of not just a religious perspective, but of the overall perspective in this country in 2020, that you all still have to deal with the challenge of being someone of an opposite race? Whoever wants to get that.
I think now it's magnified because what is going on. But I really think a lot of that stuff, like being a root cause, I think kids are taught stuff like that. People are taught things like that. And when we were at a restaurant, we were at Waffle House one day, and there was a little girl sitting behind us, and she was the cutest little thing. And she picked up the salt and pepper, and it was black and white, and she was giving it to us. Seems small and it seems simple, but it was significant to us because it showed the innocence of that child. So then the mother spoke to us, and she was talking, and she said her father is very racist. She is against, like, she has a black best friend, and the black best friend cannot even go to her house. The dad doesn't like her. But it just shows that, she said that she was raised to not like black people. And I think it's what they're taught. And if children, are sheltered in a way where they're not allowed to be in the company of other people, or they're always told bad things about people, like when you're in grade school, and I think we can all relate, they would watch the company you keep, watch who you're hanging around, don't be around certain people. When you're telling a child that, I think you're telling a child to label someone, like you're not seeing past the individual, but you're just looking at whatever negative flaws you feel that they have. So I think that that's something that's taught, and parents kind of just stick to it. And that we're in 2020. I think that people now, they know it, but they don't want to acknowledge it. They feel like they can just sweep the matters under the rug. So now we have kids who see the same thing, and they're still sweeping the matters under the rug, and nobody wants to address it. Nobody wants to address what was already embedded in these children in the first place, or even in us in the first place. The heart, it's conditions in your heart. That's just my thoughts. You got some thoughts?
I want to hear from Nick. Go ahead, Rocco. I'm sorry.
No, I would. No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to hear from Nick and Josh on that particular question. Like, why do you guys think that this is such a major issue in 2020 with interracial dating and marriages?
Well, coming from, I like to try to do things from a spiritual aspect and a practical. If you look at the spiritual aspect, God did not create black man, white man, green man, blue man, yellow man. He created man. And so the concept that we have to marry by pigmentation is like what was mentioned before. It's a learned behavior. And it all stems from a place of hatred, which hatred stems back to sin, which sin goes all the way back to Lucifer when he was, a heavenly angel and wanted to be God, right? On the practical, you have to understand that it is based upon the experiences or the history of what people have gone through. So therefore, their great grandfather was this way, and he taught his son and taught his son, taught his son, taught his daughter. And so because they are teaching that to their kids, that is either a subconscious thing or an actual conscious thing. And even the fact that we as people, especially Black people, we in the church world, I'll just say this. I won't even say it's black people. It's just the church phrase, generational curses. There's actually no such thing as a generational curse, because once you become a Christian, you're free and broken from all the curses. But you do have generational choices. You choose to repeat the things that your ancestors have done. You choose to repeat the things that your siblings have done. You choose to repeat the things that your parents have done. It's not because my father was racist that automatically makes me racist, because I have individuals that are in my life where I know for a fact that their parents are racist, like full on have said the N-word and boy and monkey and every other phrase, but the kids themselves, who are my peers, treat me like I'm one of their blood brothers. So it's a choice to allow that way of thinking, that sinful mindset, to run your life and rule it. It's unfortunate that in the church, pastors preach that type of thing, because they're now speaking at a place of authority that they don't have, because God did not create us as black man, white man, green man. He created man. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it is. Even on the politically correct phrase of POC, person of color, I think that in itself is racist, because when I buy a crayon box, every color is in their crayon: white, black, purple, yellow, brown. When I describe what color shirt that I have on, I don't say a colorless shirt, it's a white shirt. But for whatever reason, society has even tagged the phrase person of color to separate a clarity of white being more pure versus a person with darker pigmentation. So it's all from a place of hate. It's all from the spirit of sin. And whether you look at it on the spiritual side or natural side, you still have a choice to live and think that way.
Okay. Nick, I want to ask you a question about that. Why do you think we're still dealing with this in 2020, just from your perspective?
I think Ramona touched on it perfectly when she said it's just something that kind of gets swept under the rug. So I mean, even if it's taught, or you learn it gradually growing up, it's so much easier to sweep something you don't like under the rug and just kind of ignore it. And a silent voice is just as bad as an evil voice. And just ignoring problems that other people are struggling with and not offering help can be just as bad as the people who are out there doing the hurt.
So my next question, I have some interracial friends who are married, some friends who are in interracial relationships, and we have these type of conversations that I'm having with you all, of course, on a more intense level. But my next question is, with everything that's going on in this country, right? There's a lot going on in this country, a lot of racial issues going on, from seeing African Americans getting killed in the street, from seeing young black women in their house sleep and the cops bust down the door to shoot them in their sleep, from young black men having the cops called on them because they're putting groceries in a brand new car, just several things. So my question, and I want to ask Nick, Kelly, and Russell this question: being married to black people during this time, what type of thoughts go through your mind, Kelly, when you see a black man gunned down in the street or shot 7 times in the back by a police officer, or you see a black man killed in the street? As a white woman married to a black man, what goes through your mind when you see all of that stuff happening?
Honestly, it's something that I didn't even realize was happening until I was with Josh. And so this has been a massive, it's been really confronting to me in a lot of ways, because you know, when you don't live that reality, you don't, it's almost like you're able to deny that it's happening. And I think for a lot of white people, if we're not exposed to people who this has directly impacted, yeah, it's almost like we can pretend that it's not happening, or we're just ignorant to it. We don't know what's happening. Honestly, I was one of those people until it actually got pointed out. And, you know, there's a lot of times that Josh sees this stuff and is like, yeah, another man got gunned down today. And it has wrecked me. It's absolutely wrecked me. It brings me to tears, because I actually just couldn't even believe that this stuff was still happening in America. You know, I used to be of the mindset that, you know, oh, there's a lot of people who just have this victim mentality, you know, they need to get over it. You know, that slavery, it was abolished, you know, all this stuff, you know, they're just, what do they want us to do? Just keep saying we're sorry? You know, I used to actually have that mindset because I didn't see the fact that it was still going on. And that's just me being real. Like it was something that I was able to categorize as not my problem for a long time. And when I was exposed to it, when I had friends, Black friends who were affected deeply by this stuff because they're sitting there going, that could have been me. Or now my brothers-in-law who, you know, and Josh is the son of a police chief, just to even hear the conversations that he had to have with his dad, who is a police officer, saying, this is how you have to behave if you get pulled over. Because you just never know who you're about to encounter.
And I'm of the persuasion that there are a different set of rules for Black men who get pulled over than there are and it's unspoken, but there are totally different rules for a Black man. And being a Black man, raising a Black son and having Black brothers and Black nephews, there's just this. It's hard to explain, but to interaction with the law enforcement officer, and they could be a good officer for, you know, for all intended purposes, but there's always like a moment where you almost stunned silent, or you like free, because you know that if you put your hands in your pocket out of a nervous reaction, it's no telling what may happen. And I know the type person that I am. Me in a disrespectful police officer would not go well at all, because of the way that I'm built. So, and there are a lot of people like me out there that, you know, I wake up, if I get pulled over by a cop, I start sending text messages to my family saying this might be the one, because if he gets wrong, then it's just going to be what it's going to be. And I know that y'all are some ministers on here, and I commend all of you for what God has done in your life. However, if I get killed by a police officer, and let this be my referendum, do what you have to do to get your point across. That's my mindset. And I don't want to get too far off track, but I want to unpack, you know, even with what Kelly was talking about, I want to hear from Russell and Nick when it comes to, and I don't know how much you all keep up with that kind of stuff, but when it comes to like the Sandra Bland's and the Breonna Taylors, like, does that put, and this is just a very honest question that I talk to my friends about, does it put a strain on you all's relationship as it relates to the racial tension that goes on in the country? That's for the steel wagons and the Rochelle, rather. I'm sorry.
Ryan, I do know that I think you were joking, but one time, I mean, it puts an emotional strain on me as a Black woman. But one time you were joking, you're like, don't leave me. I hope you don't want to leave me because of this. And it was a joke, but it's kind of sad to think about that. You know, the strain of just just being us could possibly be too much, but I mean, I don't think it would be like that. I think for me, I guess when I felt the strain of it is when we were pregnant, just thinking about how many Black women die because of malpractice, because of not being listened to. I had a lot of anxiety because of that, and I voiced that with him. And I think I don't think you ever. I mean, obviously you never thought about that before, but I voiced that to him. Like, I don't want anybody to say anything. I don't want anybody to treat me a certain kind of way. And so yeah, that was a pretty strenuous situation, but just especially with the recent things that have come to light, because they've always been going on. I wanted to add that, like, I'm not really surprised, because for every, Jacob Blake, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, there's like hundreds others. So as a Black person, it's not a shock, but it is a shock. Like, you know that this is pretty common, but it still weighs on your psyche. And just during these recent times, I was pregnant, and it was super stressful, and I could see it weighing on him, and he would ask me questions like, "How are you doing?" Like, "Oh, what's going on?" But as for us, I think we just have to address it like any issue that any relationship would have, and we just talk it out together.
Okay. So Nick, how do you deal with, as a Black woman, how do you deal with those type tensions?
How do you deal with those type tensions?
I don't know. At the end of the day, I just try and do the best to make my wife as happy as I can make her. I know there's going to be tensions with that everywhere we go. I don't really know how to answer that.
Okay. So Russell, I would love to hear from you on that particular issue. How do you deal with the tension as it relates to what's going on in our country, being married to a Black woman, seeing the Sandra Blands and the Breonna Taylors and all those individuals? How do you deal with that?
At first, I was not aware of the extent of everything that was going on. And it was I just didn't pay attention to the news. And we had a discussion, and it really changed my perspective of it, because not only do I have a Black wife, I also have 4 Black children. And it made me think about Dimitri or Tariq, or what could happen if they're pulled over. They could lose their life because of just being a Black person. And I'd never thought about that before. And I don't know if you want to call it white privilege or what, but I never had to think about that. There was a point in my life, probably 10 years ago, I didn't think racism existed. And then when Ramona and I started dating, it was like, oh, wow, I was completely wrong. And it's not, I say that racism didn't exist is because I didn't see it. And so I've had to completely rethink the way I think, and I don't know how to deal with it. Seriously, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know if there's anything I can do except just speak about it. So I really don't know how. I try to support them the best I can, the best I know how, but I really don't know what to do.
And I sense, Josh, did you want to say something to what he was saying? Because I saw you, you seemed like you wanted to speak to something that he was saying, and I could be wrong.
Nah, it's honestly, everything that he said is amazing, because it's so much transparency in it, to the point of not thinking, because one of the biggest issues or problems that we have as Black men, when we see this type of stuff that happens, and then we have interactions with our white brothers, the first thing is, oh, I have a solution for it, or that's not real, versus like just going, man, I don't know what to do, but whatever it is that I need to do, like I'm willing to listen and learn and be educated on. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that I've seen outside of the fact that Black men are being killed just because they're Black, that Black women are being killed just because they're Black, is that people that are not of brown skin have a mindset of, if they would just comply, if they would just follow the rules, if, well, they have a track record, or they have a history, or this is what they were doing. And it had nothing to do with the moment that they were murdered. So why would you pull up a person's past history to justify an act when you know that it's, like, deep down, they know that it's wrong? So what was just explained was amazing, because it's a posture of, I don't have the answer for this, but I'm willing to learn and like listen and comfort you in this. You know what I mean? So I would rather have that posture than, you know, no, that's not real, or that doesn't happen, you know?
I think also the one thing that I loved about all of our answers, that there seems to be a common thread here, which I think is a real problem, but it can also be a great meeting point, is the reality that a lot of white people just really have no idea, whether it's willful ignorance or just the fact that they've never been exposed to it. And then when we see it, we have a choice. We can either try to sweep that shame under the rug and pretend like, you know, put up walls around it and get defensive, which a lot of us do. It's easy to do that because it is so overwhelming. It is so overwhelming to see this stuff. And the Black community has dealt with this their whole lives. But for us, when we come into it and this suddenly becomes, it doesn't even become our world. It touches our world. It's so immense that very often we just don't even know how to compartmentalize this huge issue, this massive, heart-wrecking issue that we've suddenly realized is reality. It is so hard to deal with when it all hits you at once. It's like this giant tsunami that just bowls you over. You have no idea how to deal with it. And I think that's where very often, you know, we have the choice to either be empathetic or to be defensive. And for me to say, oh, that's not really happening as a defense. Well, there is no defense. Like, at some point, we just need to shut our mouths and listen and hear what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. Because if we could all do that, a lot of our problems would actually be fixed. But it's this shame that I think we all have, you know, we feel, and rightfully so.
And one of the things that, and I loved Russell's answer, like Josh said, I love all the answers, but Russ's answer, it speaks to, if America would take that political posture that he just took and said, we don't know.
Right.
And I was telling somebody this today, because I'm being nice tonight, by the way, because I can really, you know, when we start talking about racial issues, I can really go, you know, on the whole nother spectrum.
Oh, there, brother. Oh, there. Take us there.
Well, because I told somebody today, and this is not a knock on Nick or Russell or Kelly, but when I'm talking to racist white people, I have to talk a certain way. And I'm going to say what I'm going to say, how I say it, and mean what I say. And I told the person today, you all get more, not you all, but I was talking to them. You all get more offensive about the word racism than you do about the act of racism. And a lot of people, you know, when a Black person says something is racist, me personally, I can speak on me because I would tell somebody quick, that's racist. Please don't do that. I feel disrespected when you do that. The most offensive thing that you can say to me is, that's not racist. Because then I'm gonna act the fool, you gonna act the fool, and then we just gonna be two interracially fool acting individuals. I'm gonna probably get killed by the cops when they come to break up the fight because I look like I'm the one that's causing the most ruckus.
You the aggressor.
Yes. So, but I think what Russell said was so key. If we could listen as Black people to why their mind is the way it is, and if they could listen to us when we say, okay, this is racist, and it could be something very small, but the reason why we take offense to the word boy or offense to Black women, I know some Black women take offense to white people asking, can I touch your hair? Those are the microaggressions and it could be innocent. You know, it could be sort of innocent information, but for me, and I'm talking about for me in particular, I'm one of those Black people, you know, certain white people hate to see me coming. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to be that way. It's just who I am and is who I'm going to be. I try not to stir up trouble unless I need to stir up some good trouble and bring attention to something. But it's what Russell said is so key. And if we could get politicians to embrace that posture, instead of you getting on a debate stage trying to lecture a Black woman about why she don't see racism. Right. You know, it's very, for me, it's offensive, more offensive to me for you to tell me that something isn't racist when I'm telling you that it is. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just where I am. And I'm not a pastor, Pastor Long and the Steel Wagons. I don't fight, but don't push me.
So, and I also, if I can piggyback off of what you said, how we communicated as Black people. Mm-hmm. So when all of this started happening, you know, I was like, okay, here we go again. I was kind of chill. And then it kept happening. And then I got a little upset. And I was trying to get my point across of why I was getting frustrated. And, you know, I tried not to watch the news, but the more and more I didn't watch the news, I was almost drawn in that I needed to keep watching what's going on. And so it was how I communicated it. It was no more sitting in this house with your Black wife who has these 4 Black kids, and we're not going to acknowledge what's going on outside these doors. Like we have to acknowledge it. And even when I was younger, like I said, I didn't know anything about racism. I am a very Black girl. And as a child, I hated being dark skinned because light skin was what was in and everybody wanted a light skinned girl. Nobody was checking for the dark girls. And when you're a child and also at some point being told that somebody else is prettier than you because they're lighter than you, you already have a lot of things going on in your mental that's breaking you down and hurting you. So when all of this started happening in the news, I was literally one night I was in bed side-eyeing him. Like you in this for me? Or like, what we doing here? Like what, you watching the news? Did you see what just happened? How you feel about this? Like I would wake him up in the middle of the night because now it's in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right. How do you feel? And initially he didn't give me the response I wanted. I didn't like that because he did not know. But what I didn't know is that he didn't know, and I needed to help him understand. And on one particular day, I literally had a ugly cry moment. And I explained to him every emotion that I felt, everything that I felt from white people and how they treated me. And the importance of him understanding how many times white people have hurt me, but my heart has been forgiven enough and I'm still married to a white man. And I had to make him see that no matter what, I'm all Black. I'm all for all things black. My husband can be white. He ain't got no swag. He ain't about to be out here with, listening to no rap song. The hat is not about to be turned back. None of that is going to happen. Russell is a very white man. And I'm a very black girl. And
now, let me pause for a second. Does Russell work in IT?
No, we're both in construction. We're both in construction. And that's the other thing. I work in a predominantly white male field. And I've been called colored at work. I've been disrespected at work. And all of those things I had to share with him to get him to understand that these things are affecting me, not just like on the surface, but like to my core. It's breaking my heart. And I needed him to know that my pain was real. Like, I didn't want to be a strong black woman. Like that day when I talked to him, there was no strong black woman. I was very emotional. I was very hurt, and I needed him to see that really raw side of me and how serious I was about what's going on in society, that I do have those black sons that could end up just like Trayvon Martin or oh gosh, what's the guy's name that just passed? I can't even think of his name now because I'm thinking about my kids. Every last one of them. And I've got my 2 boys, and that sits on my mind all the time. When they leave the house, I have one son that's driving, and when he goes somewhere, it's like he was also profiled because he just started wearing dreads, and he was pulled over in Clanahan, as they call it here. And the cop kept asking him, "Where's the weed at? Where's the weed at?" First of all, that shouldn't be the only thing you think my son has in his car. He's 19, he does not smoke weed, and he is an exceptionally well-mannered and behaved child. So when he kept asking him that, the crazy thing is when I went to court with him, they dismissed the charges, and it was a black cop who was dragging my son through the mud. It was almost like he took his authority and tried to use it against my son to kind of give him a one up. But when he seen that I came to court with him and we need to have a sidebar, brother, because something you doing ain't right, he changed his perspective and the charges were dropped. But when we think about, and to just reel back in, when we go back to the house, we had that conversation. We talked about it. It was very emotional. I think it's important that we as Black people, we can't say, and what I've said before is, I don't know how to tell you. I don't know how to tell you what to do. I don't know how to tell you what to think. I think we just need to be really honest and be really open about what we feel and how it made us feel.
But you also have to have somebody that's receptive to listening. Yeah. And we talk about this all the time. You can't listen to respond. Mm-hmm. You have to listen to understand. Right. And if that means not saying a word for an hour, just listening to somebody, that might be what it takes to break down some of the barriers, some of the wall. But don't sit there and it's like in your mind start formulating, this is what I want to say because I know that person's wrong in what they're saying. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. You have to listen. You have to be empathic. You have to see the emotion in them, let them get it out, and then deal with it.
And for me, because I have some white friends who will go all in for the cause for Black people, and they know who they are. And when I say go in, I find myself having to pull them back and be like, calm down. We gonna get there, because they will go all the way in and dig up their granddad and urinate on his ashes. And it's just they're that though. I have some of those kind of white friends who just literally go all the way in when they see injustice against Black people, and that's good. But for me, and I confess, Russell, it's hard for me to listen sometimes because I be ready, especially when I'm talking to someone who has shown me what they think about certain things. And I don't know if any Trump supporters are on here, and if you are, I apologize to my panelists if you're Trump supporters. But for me, the most difficult decision or the difficult situations I have is a conversation with a Trump supporter. And it's just a difficult conversation all the way around. And they don't even have to be a white Trump supporter. a black Trump supporter gets on my nerve more so than a white Trump supporter, if I'm honest. Just because of their mindset. And President Trump is unique, not just to politics, but the man has literally put family against family. He's put friend against friend. And because it's hard for me to be friends with a Trump supporter. Y'all please pray for me because it's difficult. The way that I'm built is just very difficult. But I think you guys make some very good points about your relationship. I want to ask this question because I see Rochelle and I see Kelly holding some beautiful newborn kids who are less than a year old. So my next question is for you guys, what does raising your kids, is there intersectionality when it comes to the culture of raising your kids? Like how does that work in an interracial marriage? And do you fear for your kids growing up that they'll be bullied because they have a black mom and a white dad, or a white mom and a black dad? Like, how do y'all prepare for that kind of child rearing experience? Whoever wants to jump out there.
I always feel like I first. Hold off for a minute.
I think for me, well, I have interracial cousins, so I think for me it was more of trying to, as a black woman, like it's not like I'm going to teach my daughter how to be a black woman because she's not, and that's like a hard thing to, I guess, to make when I'm talking from an African American side. That's a hard thing to say because, like, her being interracial, I can teach her how to be a strong black woman from my perspective, but she is an interracial woman, and so I want her to recognize the struggles of her mother's people and the strength of her mother's people, as well as I want her to understand both aspects of her life. And in raising her to grow up, I mean, obviously you can see that she is, the things that I experienced, like Ramona did, as being a darker skinned black female, she will never experience those things. So I want her to recognize the strength in her lineage, but also recognize the privilege that she will experience. And I want her to use that to, be an advocate for other black women, because I mean, it's evident that we will live two different lives. Where she will be accepted or her features will be accepted, mine weren't. And so I want her to recognize my beauty and recognize hers, but also understand that, because she looks this way, because she's biracial, it doesn't make her superior to anyone. And we don't have a son yet, but I think I worry for my future sons more than I worry for her, just like any other mom, because I don't think there's for black men in particular, I don't think there's a passing. Yeah, I don't think there's passing for them. Like, I think once they have a little bit of black in them, I think they're seen as aggressive. So it doesn't matter what color you are, whether you're fair or not. I think that stereotype is applied to them, and so I just worry about how they're perceived, I guess.
Wrong.
I think, to piggyback off of that, you want to make sure that you are honoring both lineages. And I think for me, for a long time, I just didn't really think about that. And then with the recent events, I had to kind of check myself and say, okay, am I being intentional about how I am mothering my children? For instance, like we live over in Australia. So now we actually have kind of an extra cultural awareness where, both of our children have actually been born here. but they have an African American heritage. They have, this really a very rich American heritage on both sides. But I even had to look at things like, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but the children's books that we have in our home, like as simple as that may seem, I had to look and say, wow, a lot of the books that we have, which a lot of them were hand-me-downs from other families that we know here who happen to be white. I started looking and I was like, these books are all so whitewashed. And it's having to constantly challenge myself to look at my children not just from my perspective and my heritage, but Josh's. And so, it's as simple as saying like, oh, we need to go, like I was like, we need to go to the bookstore right now. This is a real crisis. We have no brown people in our children's books, and Josh had to go to the children's bookstore with me here. And I'm like, no, I don't like what that says. No, we need some multicultural books. I mean, it sounds like such a trivial thing, but it's huge because already our daughter is saying things like, I'm white and you're black, daddy. And
please know that when this conversation happened in the car, she was 2, so she's 3 now. But as a 2-year-old, she said, "Oh, I picked her up from childcare, and for whatever reason, she wanted to talk about color." And she said, "Daddy, I'm white." And I said, "Excuse me?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm white and you're black." I said, "No." I said, "You're brown." She goes, "No, I'm white."
Because she's lighter skinned. She looks more like me, but with curly hair.
And I had to, like, in love, because it kind of caught me off guard. And I said, "No, baby, technically, I'm not black, I'm brown." And I said, "And you're mixed, so you're like a light brown or a khaki, right?" And I just, like, I didn't want to get more into race of it, because I'll always teach her that she's a human race. Like, there is no black, white race, blah, blah, blah. Because she is a mixed child, that's just what it is. But you are a human race. And so that will be how I teach her. But there's also the reality of when she started talking about the color of her skin and going, "I'm white." And you got to understand, even as a 2-year-old, she has so much pride in saying, "I'm white. See, look at my hands." And I was like, "Oh Lord Jesus, I gotta fix
scary.
This. I gotta fix this."
It was scary. Because we hadn't taught her that intentionally, but I think based on the culture that she's experienced and where and Australia is a pretty multicultural place. It's actually not that white, but it was something we had to. I had to take responsibility for that because.
She says she's brown now. Trust me, it worked. It worked.
So I want to, and not to cut you off. Were you done, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to end on this note because I know that there are going to be quite a few interracial people who are going to come across this video. A lot of interracial couples who are going to see it. So I want to take a moment to give each of you, and you can pick the spokesperson for each couple, to give some encouraging words to those who are in interracial relationships, maybe dating, maybe engaged, maybe married. Like, just some words that have helped guide you all to the level of success that your relationships have made. What would you say to those couples? We'll start with the Steel Wagons.
I think listen. Be open to listen to your partner. It's not easy. It's almost like you have to have thick skin, but if you have a partnership, you understand your teammate, you're in this for the long haul, and it's not just, surface love, but you really want to do life with this person, keep fighting for it. during this time of racial injustice, we definitely struggled some, because we both were like, okay, wait a minute, what are we doing here? But at the end of the day, you've got to go back to that thing that brought you together in the first place. And it's no longer just what people feel on the outside of our home, but our home is built on love. Our marriage is built on love. And even when things don't look the way we feel it should look, we still have to fight for that same common goal, which is to love each other unconditionally, fight this thing out together, and continue to encourage each other even when we don't feel like we're at our best. So I think one of the things is, you can't be ashamed, because it's easy to be ashamed to be in an interracial relationship. So listen to your partner, don't be ashamed, love unconditionally, and keep your business your business. Like, keep other people out of your business. When you have issues, keep that between the two of you. Especially women, we have a tendency to, let me tell my homegirl, or I'm going to go talk to my mom or my sister. If you have a problem in your relationship, you keep that between the two of you, because if something doesn't go right, you now stop looking at your partner, but you start looking at the advice of other people, and you start to move off of the wrong emotions. So that's what I have. I think those are the things that help us.
Okay. And the Townsends?
I think from my perspective, it would be, being in an interracial relationship, speak honestly. I know you said, Zach, that you speak differently when you talk to racist white people. I agree and I disagree with that. I think you should speak out of love always. But I think that sometimes as Black Americans, we filter because we just know that the conversations might go deeper than I think we think that they're ready for. But I think just have honest conversations about what we see going on, how we feel. And I would, from his perspective, I wouldn't want him to shy away from asking questions or making statements that he might think will come off as being not racist per se, but prejudice or racially ignorant, rather. I would want him to always be honest with me, as Kelly and I'm sorry, I drew a blank on your name, but Kelly and Josh felt. She said, I did have these thoughts, I did have these ideas where I said I wish people would be over it. I love that. I love these open conversations, because that's how we are here in 2020. When you asked before, we are not having open conversations. We're not being candid, and we, as Black people, sometimes we're too aggressive, and then sometimes we filter too much and we don't say our truth, and then it's embarrassing. I mean, I know it would be, if someone brought up something horrible in my lineage, it would be embarrassing. So don't filter yourself. Be honest. Be open. And just like anything, racial injustice, racism, it's layered. It's not going to be a one conversation thing. It's going to be a 100, a year. I mean, we're going to be talking about this, for our entire relationship. It's not one day we're not going to be like, oh, remember that time we had that conversation on racism and it's over now? That's never going to happen. Just being open to constant, raw conversations is what I would say. And yes, do not tell people your business at all.
And you're perfect alone.
I first want to say, for anyone that is dealing with interracial relationships, whether dating, engaged, or married, one of the most important things is that you got to remember who you are and where your identity is founded and who it's founded in. And you should never shy away from your culture, but there should be an understanding that my culture is my culture, her culture is her culture, and we're bringing it together in love, being the foundation. And it's also important to have a posture and a heart of empathy. Like you can't go into a relationship and expect it to work if you don't have that compassion or consideration for the other person, as well as the things that the other person is going to be dealing with or has dealt with. And then also rejection. Just know that rejection is a real thing. Like some of us have dealt with rejection in the past and we're still overcoming it. Some of us are still dealing with rejection, whether it's an internal thing or if it's something coming from the outside. When it comes to race, there will always, like we just said, there will always be racial tension. Like honestly, until the world ends, there will be racial tension. But what I really love is keeping it in your home, keeping it in your relationship, keeping that foundational standard to the point to where we say, no matter what the world is doing, no matter what Tom, Dick, and Harry have to say, we decide how we are going to push this relationship forward, or how we're going to move forward, and how we're going to love each other, or how we're going to, raise our kids. And sometimes that means that you got to kind of disconnect from your family and friends. I've told individuals dealing with the same thing that, they look at Kelly and I and they say, oh, you guys are interracial and you're getting married. We're dealing with the same thing, but my family is this, and that. And I'm like, well, if you're going to marry this person, the Bible tells you that you have to actually leave your family and hold on to your spouse. So let's just go on a fast and let's fast voices. And even if those voices are your mom or your dad or your siblings, that's just what you have to do. Right. And trust me, they'll come along. They'll get on the boat eventually. Even if you gotta make a bold statement and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm marrying this person and we're going to have kids, and you won't see your grandkids if you don't accept my spouse, because you choose as a parent what environment to put your kids in. You know what I mean? So I want to encourage everyone that your relationship should not be based upon color. It should be based upon the emotional fact that other individual makes you feel like you're the best version of yourself, and that they're going to help you get to the goal that you feel that is a part of your life and your destiny.
Thank you guys so much for this insightful and enlightening conversation. All of you are such wonderful couples, and I really enjoyed talking to you guys and gaining some insight about the different elements of interracial relationships. And I like Rochelle said, there's so many factors, and this can't be a one-time conversation, because there's several people who need to hear you all's story and how to navigate, especially during these troubled times. So thank you guys so much, and I definitely look forward to talking to you guys again.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Thank you.